CEO Ronald creating a difference. I wanted to jump on staff and talk briefly about why having two arsenals is important. And I wanted to kind of use something that we've done with this Pro Shop course. We actually have a Pro Shop course, if you didn't know that we offer to people that want to know information about bowling. And one of the things that I wanted to show you quickly is this graph here that I got kind of pulled up. It's about the lanes and lane play. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you this slide, hopefully in a little bit bigger detail. Let's see here. I want to do it from this slide here. Uh-oh, that might not do it. We're going to find out if I actually just broke my computer or not. It's very well possible. Oh, look at that. There we go. So let's just go ahead and shrink that down. There we go. Nice and big. We don't need to learn more. We got it. We're good. Anyway, so what I want to show you here is kind of the difference between bowling on a house pattern versus bowling on a sport pattern. And then I want to describe why it's important that you have two different sets of bowling balls. So here's how it kind of works. So the top graph, as you can see over here, is a house pattern. And these are bowling balls that were all different surfaces. So there's a lot of performance difference here in the cover stock prep. But the ball motion is very, very close. And the reason why it's close is because on a house shot, the house shot is really designed to steer your bowling ball to the pocket. So you're going to take the differences in bowling balls, or in this case, the differences in surface, and you're going to minimize those differences, okay? Now, those exact same bowling balls were then thrown on a sport pattern, which is the bottom graph. And you can see basically there's just a lot more separation in this bottom graph than there is in the top graph. That's kind of the whole point. The separation's a lot bigger in the bottom than it is in the top. So the point being here is this. If you have different bowling balls and you use them in league, they're going to be minimized. The differences in the bowling balls are going to be minimized because of the pattern you're bowling on. Those same bowling balls are going to roll completely different on a sport pattern. And you say, well, what does that have to do with the question? Well, here's how it matters. So what I'm telling you is you should have two different arsenals. You should have a league arsenal. You should have a tournament arsenal. And your tournament arsenal should basically consist of the four types of ball motion. And the reason being is because when you get to a flatter pattern, you want to make sure that you at least have a bowling ball that's going to be able to work on that flatter pattern. The problem is you won't know what that bowling ball is until you get on that pattern, because those bowling balls on a house pattern are going to look very similar. So that's why it's important to have yourself a tournament arsenal, and that's also why it's important not to use those balls for tournaments in league, because in order for you to keep them separate, to keep them different, you're going to have to, hang on, I don't want that there. You're going to have to focus and make sure, don't do that. All right, well, there we go. In order for you to make sure that those balls are different, you're going to have to throw them on the environment that you're trying to practice with them on. So what I'm saying is that there's no good way to know how these bowling balls are going to separate out, because it's a function of the pattern. But if you know you have bowling balls from the different ball motion types, then that at least gives you the opportunity to, when you go to an event, to be able to get a different reaction than maybe some of the other balls. And maybe one of those reactions will give you a much better chance to hit the pocket as opposed to not being able to hit the pocket. So I can tell you it is kind of crucial. What I would say, if for a regular league arsenal, 4 or 5 balls is going to be plenty. And then when you go to a tournament, 6 balls is probably going to be the right number, but those 6 balls may not overlap from the 4 to 5 balls you use in league. Typically what I do is I like to take a couple of balls from league, one that's kind of my favorite, and then I'll take bowling balls that cover those other ball motions, and then include my spare ball, obviously, which gets used obviously on both sets of patterns, the house shot as well as a flatter pattern. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's very important to have multiple arsenals if you can afford it, because what it will do is it will give you more versatility when you go to harder tournaments or harder patterns. Because if you don't do that and you get all your bowling balls drilled about the same, or all your bowling balls do work the same, then when you get yourself in a situation where you're on a tougher environment, all your bowling balls are still going to be about the same. And they're not going to give you a lot of performance difference. And the more you use the bowling balls, the closer they're going to become in performance. That's just how it works. So it's important that you keep the surface on the bowling balls the way they're supposed to be. If you can't afford multiple arsenals or two sets of bowling balls. It doesn't necessarily matter, pin up, pin down, how they're drilled so much, other than the fact that they definitely are different types of ball motions. You need to make sure you have the 4 types of ball motions in both sets of arsenals. And like I said, if you can't afford that, then you want to make sure you have, the sanding pads to be able to be able to separate your bowling balls out. Because like I said, in these graphs here, you can see these balls definitely are more separated out than the balls up here, even though it's the exact same set of balls. It's just a function of the pattern that's creating that separation. But if you were able to use different bowling balls, then this separation can get even greater. And because of that, it'll give you a better chance of being able to have the right ball for the tough pattern that you may be bowling on. So that's kind of a little bit of an explanation as to why it's important to have 2 sets of arsenals. If you can afford it. If you can't afford it, then it's important, without question, to have as many surface options available to yourself as possible, because then surface will be the key to change your ball reaction and be able to hopefully get you to have a product that works really well on that environment. So I wanted to touch on that real quick. And there was one other thing I was going to jump on and talk about real quick. Somebody had asked, they said, hey, can you break it down really easy and tell us what the difference is between symmetrical and asymmetrical balls? And I said, in my little response, I said symmetrical balls or asymmetrical balls hook earlier. I said that's really what the difference is. And then somebody else kind of chimed in and had another question as to kind of why that was. So let me go down here and see if I can find it really fast. I think it was like 45, 46, right around there, where I can actually explain it to you very, very briefly. Yeah, here we go. So very, very briefly, that's what a symmetric ball looks like. And these areas that are different colors indicate what's called a contour or an RG plane. Like this red signifies to 2.640, and this blue signifies to 2.584. So all of the blue is 2.584, all of the red is 2.640. And the difference between an asymmetrical ball and a symmetrical ball is this is what a symmetrical ball looks like, and this is what an asymmetrical ball looks like. And it's not so much the colors that matter as much as the shape. So like this is more of an elliptical shape, and this is more of a just a round shape. So the long story short is the reason why asymmetrical balls hook earlier is because asymmetrical balls create this type of shape, and the simplest way to say it is this kind of shape right here requires more energy consumption as your axis point begins to move across it, as opposed to this type of shape. That's the very, very basic explanation. But there is nothing more to it than that. Everything else being equal, the difference between an asymmetrical ball and a symmetrical ball is going to be purely that the asymmetrical ball is going to hook earlier, and everything else being the same. So I wanted to kind of clarify that too. That's what an asymmetrical ball looks like. That's what a symmetrical ball looks like. Because of the shape of those contours, those colors, you're going to get earlier hook. And because this doesn't have that shape and it's more of a straighter path, you're going to get less earlier hook, or less, you can say, later hook. So that's the difference between asymmetric and symmetrical balls. We could go into a lot more detail. Obviously, there's a ton of stuff over here that we could dive into. And maybe at some point we will spend some more time doing that, especially if you guys have questions. But I just wanted to touch on that really quick and give you a little information, because I know people are asking questions, and that's what this group is all about, asking questions and getting answers that are going to be able to help you bowl better. So with that being said, I'm out of here. CEO Ron Hickler from Create a Difference. Talk to you soon.